Hey, Brown Girl Banter.
Hey, Brown Girl Banter.
I'm your girl, Dr. Dangerfield.
And I am Dr. Patience. We are excited to be here today.
Super excited. Yes, yes.
That's why we
yes.
have on our college t-shirts. We want you one to know we're educated. So one, we have on our college t-shirts.
As if you didn't know.
As if you didn't know.
You have to wear a t-shirt.
You have to. You have to.
Yes.
We have to rep our school.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
love
it
it.
is.
I love it.
And then we're extra excited. And the reason why we wear these is because we have one of my favorite educators in the building today, Dr. Michelle Steele.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Excited to be here.
She is a woman of many trades. Would you agree?
Yes,
Dr. Danger
she is.
Steele. And
Yes.
so we're going to let her tell you about all of her educational experiences, who she is, what she does. Before we even dive into asking her any type of questions, we just want you to know who we have sitting at the table with us today. So Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself, girl.
Yes, so I am a native Nashvilleian. I don't know if we know that this is being taped in Nashville, but I am a native, married for nearly 20 years to my best friend, Larry Steele Jr. We have two beautiful children, Sheldon and Chelsea, who keep us going quite a lot. I serve as Associate Vice President for External Affairs at Meharry Medical College. I also am a professor of public health and of leadership. Very involved in community. I was just teaching this past weekend, I believe in the power of voice. And so I teach young people and any opportunity I have to speak, the power that you have within yourself to affect change in your situation if you will show up at the table. And the tables can be a table like this. It can be in community. It could be at church. It could be wherever you live, work, play, and serve is what I like to say. And so that's a little bit about me.
See? What we tell y'all?
What we tell y'all.
We just don't bring anybody to the table.
We ensure that you're going to get something out of who we bring to this table.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Thank you.
So, Michelle, we want to talk, I think we had a diverse, things that we want to talk to you about today, about leadership, about education, about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that is something that you are well versed in. So one of the big topics that I think we talked about a couple of episodes ago,
Yes.
maybe, about just the importance of states removing, language and books and curriculum in the classrooms. I mean, they're trying. First, it was. I feel like in the beginning it was university level, collegiate level. Then it just kind of started coming on down the pipeline to the little kids.
Yeah.
I do want to give a little backdrop. Michelle and I have daughters that go to the same school.
Yes.
Who are in the same class and have been in the same class for about 3 years now. So, whenever there's something going on at the school we attend, this is who I go to talk about those things. So what do you think about, Michelle, this Dr. Steele, about all this change happening and this curriculum being removed from the classrooms?
I think it's so much about power and fear of losing power. I believe that progressives made the mistake of making the announcement that in year, whatever that would be, that black and brown people would outnumber white people. And I really believe that's when we've always had issues around race. Always have had issues around race. But this ramp up in our lifetime has come when progressives made that announcement. And I don't mean progressives as in politicians. I mean organizations that do this work started touting that black and brown people would outnumber Caucasians, would outnumber white people. And there was a fear around that.
Yes.
And we saw a president that is no more Republican than I am run in that party
on a platform
of fear. And here we find ourselves. And when I tell you that conservatives, right wings, even some moderates it's their everyday work to ensure that they keep their power.
Yes.
It is fascinating. And I just to believe that around DEI, that those of us that are proponents for the work, we've got an uphill battle because they're hitting everything. And it started in higher ed, but ultimately
Yes.
it's down
Yeah.
on the level with our babies. And
Taking books out.
Yeah.
Not wanting to teach.
taking and a conversation that I hope we can have tomorrow at our children's open house, because they ask us to submit questions, is around, okay, there are banned books, but what about these books that explicitly make our children feel like they are less than?
Yes.
So you're not taking those books out of the school system. But we had an assignment last year about colonialism and how the colonizers could have done a better job. What are we really talking about?
Exactly.
And why is that okay, but a book about the bluest eye is not?
Right.
So
That is
Yeah.
so true. And I think that we are kids because advocates, right? I mean, even from a
Parents,
higher education
yeah.
level to the lower school level, like
Yeah.
if we are not advocating and speaking up and saying things, then who?
then who?
Who's gonna do it?
Who's gonna do it?
Who's gonna speak on behalf of children, but then also parents that don't know
Right.
what their voice is
Is.
or how to use their voice? Because if we think about even in our education system, some of our children, their parents didn't have a good experience
Right.
in education.
Right.
So they're like, oh, I'm not gonna go to the school, or I'm not gonna say anything, or
Right.
they're fearful of, if I go to the school, are they going to retaliate against my child?
Yeah.
So how do you help them to also use their voice?
Right.
To be able to say, hey, we need more conversation around this in the school, or if their child is being perceived as being mistreated, or is being mistreated because of the color of their skin, or just how they show up. How do we somewhat equal?
Or meet them where they
Meet
are.
there, yeah.
As educators, as administrators, we have to be cognizant of that. Some schools have PTSOs and PTAs and whatever else they're called, parent groups that have a robust participation, high level of participation. My son is in an MNP at school now, and the PTO it's not even average; it's below average. The number of parents that show up. But I can't say that they're not showing up in other ways because, for example, at our daughter's school, I've chosen not to participate in the larger group, but I'm meeting with and working with, advocating with that teacher directly in the classroom about my child's experience. But we've got to create other opportunities, and it can't always be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It can't be at 6 o'clock there has to be different ways that we meet parents where they are. Because of work schedule, because of a myriad of things, we've got to be creative and think outside the box about how we get to parents, whether it be in the churches. And some would say, well, people aren't going to church. Okay, then then we can't have an in-person meeting. Let's have a Zoom meeting. I know we're zoomed out, but really, Zoom allows me to cook dinner and have a meeting at the same time.
Exactly. It's very convenient.
And so utilizing those opportunities, and even if a parent can't show up at that appointed time, record the meeting.
So they can have the information.
So they have the information that you want them to have. I'm feeling really inundated with newsletters this year. But I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot of information here, and I need to get it on my calendar.
Yes.
I need to make sure that things are happening. And so it doesn't always work out for me, because I'm a little bit behind on the calendar. We have an assignment due tomorrow. Did the child do it this weekend? I told her to. I don't really know if it happened.
Check it out this afternoon.
We'll check it out this afternoon, along with Boy Scouts and tutoring. And they have to get a good night's sleep, And so with me in a 2-parent household with resources, with resources, I'm still struggling, right? And so we as educators and administrators just going to have to get really creative about how we're sharing information.
So how do you, as an educator, believe that the changes in curriculum and pulling of books or whatever is the restrictions that are happening, how do you think that's impacting, the kids that you saw over the weekend from, at the university, and the ones that are in 3rd grade or 5th grade or at middle school? How do you think that this is going to, is it going to be a long-term effect that we're going to see? Is it impacting them right now? What do you think, or what are you seeing? I guess you both kind of answer this because you're in the classroom too, and I am not.
Yeah, I think that is, I think about it on a visceral level. And as my children get older, and they are out with their friends who may not look like them,
Yes.
right? And they are being treated in a way by someone that's serving them, or police, or any number of persons. Will that person that doesn't look like them speak up for them?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Will they know that this is racist behavior, or that their friend is being treated unfairly? I think by pulling a lot of this information, we don't recognize our children are not able to recognize when something is happening. They don't recognize, they don't know the cues, the dog whistles on one
Yes.
on one end. And then as it relates to just, for example, politics, we talk about the people who came before us and the fights that they had to
Yes.
make sure that we have this power. But if we're not teaching and educating about more than ML King and Rosa Parks and Sacagawea, right? And all of the contributions of our people, we're going to continue to make the same mistakes that they made. I say all the time that this, where we are is passed down to every generation. It makes no sense that we're having the same conversations generation after generation after generation.
Like you said,
I'm
it's
thinking
passed
about,
down.
it's passed down. I'm thinking about the fact that I used to sit down for the pledge because of some injustice in the rap world. And we're still doing that.
Exactly.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
Our children, they're, oh, mom, it's fine, and I have white friends, and but do they have black friends?
Are you the only black
Are you the
friend?
only, and yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this generation they're more inclusive.
They are
And
very
they're,
inclusive.
and they're,
And I believe that's fine.
which is good. But then
But-
also, what are the limitations
Right.
that it's setting up?
And are there limitations? And I hear what you're saying. Are there limitations? But when we're thinking about them being out together, what does that look like? Do you know that your friend can be treated differently because of the color of their skin? We can't be, we can't have our head under the pillows and under the, we can't act like those things.
That it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't act.
We
like
see it every day on the news though, because just this weekend, the shooting in
Oh,
Jacksonville,
that's
it
true.
started where the young man went to HBCU to start his shooting, which he was turned away,
Yeah.
and then went to the Dollar General
Yeah.
to shoot these individuals, and they're saying it was a hate crime.
Oh, yeah,
It
they're
wasn't
good.
like, that was like,
Yeah.
he was having a psychotic break. No,
No,
that was
it was
a hate
crime.
It was
Let's be-
intentional.
Yeah,
Yes, he
very
knew what he was
intentional.
doing.
It was a hate crime, and so
Yeah, and so our children may see that, that was a hate crime, but they don't see the subtle.
ways that we even got there.
Yeah, there.
And then
Yeah.
they're like, well, what's a hate crime?
That part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, and not just them, they're friends too,
Yeah.
right? They're
Yeah.
friends who don't look like them. Because if no one's getting the education, if no one's getting the language, if no
Yes.
one's getting the understanding, oh, are you getting treated differently? Well, I don't even know what you getting treated differently looks like.
right.
Yeah, it's everybody's treat. No, they're not.
Exactly. I don't think about that often because growing up in Detroit, we were, I was inundated with just Black culture, Black struggle, Black life. And my teachers were Black, my classrooms were Black. And so that was just all I know. And so when I'm with my children now, or even my niece has been on here, my niece and nephew who are older, and they don't really connect to that. That is, I'm so disconnected from, I don't even understand it. Me trying to wrap my mind around like, I'm fighting for this to stay in your classroom for you to understand, but I'm like, I lived in it every single day,
Right,
yeah,
and so that disconnect.
And you do on some level. Again, you just don't realize.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
When your teacher is, oh, look at your hair. Last week it was curly. That was short. Oh my,
Don't get us started
Really?
on hair. Don't get us on hair. Exactly. So we got to pass laws about
But these
hair.
little microaggressions, come
Yeah.
on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think
Yeah.
that's going to be, I mean, I never even thought about the impacts of kind of seeing that later on and the advocacy for your peers and their ability to do that for you. I never even.
We got to think about that as they get older.
The voice.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have their voice.
Who will speak for me?
That's it. Yep, you said it.
So tell me a little bit about your leadership roles, or tell us and our listeners about your leadership roles.
So again, I started with the fact that a mission for me in life is to teach people the power they have within themselves to affect change in their own situation. And so I did the doctorate in leadership and professional practice at Trevecca Nazarene University here. And I use that process to do exactly that, create opportunity, community development for people to be involved in things that impact them. And so I still teach a course on where our students identify in a master's program, where our students identify issues.
Okay.
And I like to call them, because sometimes they like to go safe, and I'm like, no, what are the wicked issues? The issues with systems and tentacles, and every question leads to another question, and why you only have 12 months to do this, 18 months to do this. What can you impact in that time frame? And so leadership for me is around community development. My students understanding who they are, whose they are, I throw that in there, and what they can really achieve. And then looking at, so to lead, you got to know who you are, because you might look around and nobody following.
And does that make you a leader?
Exactly.
Or is somebody taking a long walk? Which one is it?
Which one is
I mean, so we start there, and then again looking at issues, and so understand. So collaborative leadership is a leadership philosophy that I take into community with me, where everyone has a voice, but the leader ultimately has to decide, and you decide with good information. You decide with the input of others. Now, that type of leadership style takes a while. So understanding that it takes a while, you got to start early. Or if you're behind the 8 ball and you're starting late, there's a way to consensus build around things, and then quickly make your decisions. And so I enjoy teaching leadership. I've been at now at Meharry, I've been at Lipscomb University, and doing that work in that conservative space has been interesting, but really life-giving to me, because I see a student that doesn't look like me, who is fighting against their parents, the way that they were raised, and they're like, they like,
we heard that, we felt that thing.
you felt that they like, this ain't right, and so they have a lot of questions. I love it. I taught at Tennessee State University in their public service and urban affairs program for a number of years, and so it's the same work, different places, different spaces, but I enjoy teaching leadership. And public policy and public administration and urban affairs and urban development, and I link it all back to leadership.
So Dr. Dangerfield doesn't know you do this, but there is one of the courses you used to teach. You took the kids on the public transportation. Tell Dr. Dangerfield and our listeners a little bit about their why did you do that?
So, well, first of all, I did it because I was teaching an urban studies course.
Okay.
And so you got to understand the urban core in an urban studies course. But also because students don't realize that they have a resource that is available to them for free. Students in college around Nashville get free bus passes through their ID. Same with Metro Nashville Public Schools. So my son probably won't be on the bus, but I got him a bus pass because there's off chance.
He may have to get it.
He may not know how to do it, but he has a bus pass to do it.
And you can walk him through it. If you have to walk him through it on your phone,
the bus driver, get on there.
Go down here. When you're standing there, make sure it's a sign that tells you catch the one that's going downtown.
Because it all ends ultimately downtown. So they can. But I
come back to you.
I did it for the reason that I'm teaching an urban studies class, but also that you have this resource available to you, and you need to understand how to use the resource. Because I don't believe in leaving stuff on the table. You understand? And these babies don't have cars, or if they do, ride the public transportation. So we do that for those two reasons. But then also I take them on a walking tour of downtown.
Okay.
And I pay specific attention to all of the ways that civil rights impacted our city, and so there's I throw some things in there.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. So I had to share that little story with y'all.
Forget about that.
Yeah. But I have a question.
This is
As you
fun.
were talking about leadership and how you help the individuals develop their leadership style and their identity. And so for you, share a little bit with us and our listeners, like, how did you create your leader identity?
Wow. So I actually just talked about this with some students because this question came up.
Okay.
My mother was always the type that made us do assessments.
Okay.
All right, Ma.
Okay.
Okay, Ma.
She wants you to know who you were.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. And so I am passing that along to my children
Okay.
in the way of self-affirmation and how did you do this year and what are your goals for the next year. Now, some would argue that they don't write annual goals. What do they call? Resolutions.
Oh, okay.
Because you never finish it or you don't get. But my thing is, and I got this also from my pastor, the Reverend Dr. Michael Lee Graves at Temple
Okay.
Church. He's deceased now, but he always taught us a spirit of excellence, and in that excellence, he taught the scripture a lot. Write the vision, make it plain, and if you
Okay.
don't write it down, it doesn't happen. And so my leadership identity came from writing
Okay.
goals, understanding who I am, and hearing my grandmother say, go get the highest educational attainment that you can possibly get, because we didn't. And so when I was working on a doctorate, leadership work, figuring out that leadership was the degree that I wanted. And I wasn't working in higher ed at the time.
Okay.
I was working for metropolitan government, and I understood that leadership could be in any space. And so I wanted to understand how to do it better. And,
Okay.
people will put a label on you, oh, you're a leader. And, you're like, well, what does that mean? And what
Okay.
kind of leader do I want to be? And that label that people assign, I said, okay, and did it. I remember someone was like, well, why are you getting a doctorate? You work for metropolitan government. I worked for metro government for 14 years. And so going to get a doctorate did not make sense to a lot of people,
Yeah.
but I knew what had been poured
Instilled
into
in
me
you.
and instilled into me
Yeah.
early on and years earlier. And so,
That speaks to something, because we're easy to get wrapped into what others say about us.
Yeah.
And how others try to define us and, create
Yes,
our
sir.
path and our journey for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And we can get caught in that, but it's up to us to remember the foundational work
Right.
Yep.
that has been put in us,
Yeah.
and to, even if it's scary, even
Yeah.
if it's uncomfortable, even if
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to everybody else, to still move forward and do that thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just things we talk about in therapy all the time with our clients.
Yes, those
yes,
things.
those
Those
things.
things. So-
Those things.
There's a message. I feel like we should have said that at the end of that.
Go ahead. Message. That'll preach.
Exactly. No, I think that's so important. I do. And I love the way that you came with your leadership style. I think one of the things is that sometimes leaders, and being Lucretia always talk about this, is can get thrown into a role or
Yeah.
an opportunity and just feel like, well, it's the next thing I'm supposed to do. So let me just take this leadership position and do it with no idea what that
Of what
even
it
means.
entails, or knowing who they are.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, what I found is that they get into these positions and then they're fighting for their own identity.
Right.
And so they take on the identity of the place that they are, and it's like, but it's it's hitting up against their own value system. Like something you said, you like, I remember what I was told,
Right.
was instilled in me.
Right.
So that helped to develop it and to create it for you. But there are some people that's like, ooh, that. Why does that sting? Because it's bumping against.
Because it bumps up against, and I have entered spaces because of identity, and I've left spaces because it didn't,
Yes.
because of identity, because it didn't match up. And I would say to your listeners and viewers that as you're thinking about your leadership and how you show up, if it don't feel good,
Trust yourself.
stay a while. Stay, as long as it makes sense. But do those things that fulfill you and that pour into you, especially if you're on a job that is no longer fulfilling you. No, you're leading and it's no longer there, but you can't afford to leave. I know there's a generation that quits, but there are some of us who need to stay because we need our coin. There are ways to be in spaces still that feel you.
Yeah.
So when you're in those spaces, act authentically. I know I talk about speaking truth to power a lot. And we don't have to do that, but I'll be like, what you not going to do? We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But we can say, there's just some things in my life that I don't allow space for. And this is one of those things. And so there are ways to read people without
Reading people.
So I think, Lucretia, I'm gonna let you end it on your fabulous question, because I feel like that's a fabulous question for Dr. Steele to answer, because you will feel, I mean, after listening to you, you've just accomplished so much.
Yeah.
And so I don't believe in work-life balance, I believe in harmony. But what were you gonna talk to her about, Dr. Dangerfield?
thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
So what, you talked a little bit about it at the beginning, is how do you, and we won't say balance,
Yeah.
but how do you have work-life harmony and still take care of yourself
Yeah.
in all of it?
Yeah. So I'm not always good at it, at work-life harmony. As my children get older, it becomes really difficult because they have so many things that they're involved in, and you want them to have what you didn't have.
That could preach too.
Yeah,
I want them to have
that's a whole different.
Yes.
We have to bring you back to have that conversation.
Exactly.
So you find yourself running, and then I said I've been married going on 20 years in November, trying to find time to date with the kids' schedule, and then your friends. It's like it can get daunting, and I'm not going to tell you that I do it well. I am going to say that I try. But focus is my children, my husband, not in that order, my husband, my children, and of course I got to do work, but I recognize you need the friendships in order to, and that's how you take care of yourself.
Okay. Yes.
Right? I recognize that. And so it's always a challenge. It's always a harmony. I won't say a balance. It's always a challenge. It's always trying to figure out how to harmonize all of those different facets. But I give myself space to understand that it's also a season, right? And I know it doesn't have to always
that.
be like
Yeah.
this. And a season may be years. And I hope it's not until the kids are 18.
All of us hope that.
I hope that's not that, but it can. You're in a season, and so you have to give yourself that, and those that love you give you that space as well. But you may have to say no to some things, and so yesterday I said no to a soccer game for my daughter because I was worn out, and so her daddy had to go. Okay,
Hey.
yeah. And so
And he did it.
But he did it, and he didn't do it like I thought. Like I would.
but he did it like he would do it. And that's probably some of the pressure that we had to take off of ourselves. Because like we ask people like, oh, can you do this? But then we still want to control how they do it.
Right.
It's like, if I'm gonna take her, let me take her.
Right.
And
when you give it away, I've been doing this more and more. Lame.
that's good. Yes.
And I may not say it out loud, but I'll
But you
know.
say it to yourself so you
Yes.
No, I'll actually do this.
know. Oh, that's a good way
That's
to do it.
even
I
better.
could be sitting in the meeting and I'll go,
Lame.
hey, what is that?
I like
Nothing.
that.
I like it.
I like that.
Y'all start using that out there. Y'all stay in your lane. And I
Remind
felt,
yourself.
I felt a little attacked with Dr. Dangerfield saying that we want to control how people do things. That's a whole nother therapy session me and her can have afterwards. We want to thank Dr. Michelle Steele so much for being with us today. I
Thank
mean,
you so much
the
for having me.
information you shared today is
That's good.
just amazing. That was good stuff.
Thank
So
you.
we are excited about you all getting the opportunity to see this episode. Be sure to like, be sure to share, be sure to comment. This will be dropping in our September, I don't know the date, but y'all know the second Tuesday.
It's the second Tuesday in September.
Second Tuesday in September, so be sure that you are watching this and enjoying and sharing it with other people.
I think it's a 12.
Anything else?
Okay, so we think it's around the 12th. If
See?
it's not the 12th, it's
Look at that.
Second
There you
Tuesday.
go.
the second.
Well, again, thank you. We appreciate you all. Be sure to share, like,
Thank you
you.
for having me, Dr. Ruffin and Dangerfield.
Bye,
Bye,
Brown
Brown
Girl
Girl
Banter.
Banter.